I was not looking for anything when I found it. It was a Sunday morning. She was still asleep, and I was going through the bank statement the way I do at the start of every month. Then I saw a transfer for $300 moved out of our joint account to an outside account with a number I was not familiar with. When she came downstairs, I asked her about it. She said she opened her own account, just wanted something separate for personal odds and ends. I didn't make a big stink out of it, I just let it go. But I kept pulling the statements every month, and the more I looked, the more I noticed something that made me a little suspicious. Those transfers never happened when she was home. They happened when she was traveling for work, every single time. Not before the trip, not after, always during. I did not say a word about it, but I started paying attention in a way I never had before. We have been married 9 years. I own a construction company in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, 14 employees, 11 years in business, built from nothing. She worked as a consultant and traveled 2 or 3 times a month, always with a client name, always with a reason that sounded plausible. I never questioned the travel, not once in 9 years. Then the transfer started. First one was $300 out of our joint account to an outside account. I asked her about it, and she said she opened a personal account for odds and ends. Second transfer came 2 months later, $400. During a week she was traveling. Third one came the month after, $350, another trip. By the fourth transfer, I was done asking questions internally. I pulled every statement going back 8 months and laid them out on my office desk after everyone went home. 14 transfers, ranging from $200 to $500, every single one time-stamped during a trip, never when she was home, never on a weekend, only when she was somewhere I was not. The next morning, I pulled up our phone bill and went through every call and text on her line going back 6 months. Nothing. Her sister, her mother, her manager, numbers I could account for. A few nights later, she left her phone on the counter and went to shower, and I went through it. Messages clean, deleted folder empty, photos nothing unusual. I put her phone back and went to bed. She was careful, and careful people are a different kind of problem. About a month after I went through her phone, something showed up in the mail, a postcard from a hotel in Memphis thanking her for her recent stay, addressed to her by name, with a loyalty points balance printed on the back. I did not confront her. I took my phone out, photographed both sides of it, put it back in the pile with the rest of the mail, and went to the garage. 2 weeks later, she told me she had a client trip coming up at the end of the week. I asked her where she was headed. She said Memphis. I did not flinch, did not push, just said okay and told her to be careful. That night after she went to bed, I pulled up the hotel on my phone, the same one from the postcard, found their website, and booked myself a room for the same date she said she would be traveling. I told her I had a job site emergency that weekend, a concrete pour that got pushed and needed supervision. She kissed me goodbye Friday morning and left with her bag. I waited 4 hours, packed a change of clothes and a hoodie, and drove to Memphis. I checked in under my name, paid cash at the front desk for incidentals, and asked for a room on the side of the building that faced the pool. She was already there. I spotted her car in the parking lot before I even pulled into a space. I did not go to the room, did not call her, did not do anything except go upstairs, change into the hoodie, pull the drawstring down low, and find a spot near the pool entrance where I could see without being seen. I waited, but nothing happened that day. Saturday afternoon, they came out together. A man I had never laid eyes on in 9 years of marriage. Not at a dinner, not at an event, not in a photograph. Nobody I could place from any corner of our life together. They were comfortable with each other. I had my phone out. 6 photos in 40 minutes. The two of them at the pool, laughing, his hand on her back, practically all over her. two of them kissing like they were the only people outside. I stayed disguised in that hoodie for 2 days. I got what I needed, packed my bag Sunday afternoon, and drove home. She pulled into our driveway 2 hours after I did. I was sitting on the couch watching television when she walked in. She greeted me, said the trip went well, and asked what I wanted for dinner. I told her to make whatever she wanted. Monday morning, I called an attorney before I left the house. A buddy of mine used her 2 years back and said she was straight to the point and did not mess around. I walked in that afternoon with my phone, the postcard photograph, and 8 months of bank statements. She looked at everything and did not say much. Then she told me something that brought music to my ears. In Mississippi, if your spouse cheats, they get nothing, no alimony, not a dollar. The affair kills the claim before it even starts. She pulled up a chair and went through the bank statements line by line. 14 transfers, every single one timed to a trip, not one of them on a weekend when my wife was home. Then she looked at the 6 photos from Memphis, the pool, his hand on her back, the two of them kissing like they had been doing it for years. She put the phone down and said to me, "This is good. We have everything we need." She asked me how I wanted to handle the confrontation. Did I want to be there when my wife was served, or did I want to be somewhere else? I told her I wanted to be home. I wanted to see it. We set the date for 2 weeks out. I went home that night and cooked dinner and sat with my wife and did not say a word about any of it. She talked about a client call she had earlier, said work was picking up, said she might have to travel again soon. I told her that was fine. 2 weeks later, the process server knocked on our front door on a Saturday morning while my wife was still in her robe drinking coffee. I was sitting in the living room when she opened it. I haven't seen that look on her face in almost 9 years. She looked at me. I looked back at her. She said, "What is this?" I said, "I think you have an idea of what that is." She stood at the front door holding the papers. Then she started crying. She came toward me, and I told her to sit down. She asked me how long I had known. I slid my phone in front of her with the Memphis photos pulled up. She looked at the screen and the crying stopped. She asked me who took those, and I told her I did. She asked me when, and I told her the weekend she said she was working. Then she told me it did not mean anything, that it was a mistake, that she would end it, and they could go to counseling. I told her the papers were already filed. The attorney already had everything, and Mississippi law was not going to be kind to her when the judge saw what I had. She asked me what I meant by that. I told her she was screwed and she wasn't getting a penny. Then she asked about the house. I told her the house was mine before we married and the deed had never changed. She asked about the joint account. I told her every transfer she made out of that account during her trips was documented and going before the judge as wasting money outside the marriage. She got up and went to the bedroom and closed the door. An hour later, she came out with a bag packed and walked out the front door. The divorce hearing was 6 weeks later. She showed up with an attorney who tried to argue that the affair was brief and had no financial impact on the marriage. My attorney put the bank statements in front of the judge. 14 transfers, 8 months, every single one timed to a trip she made to Memphis to be with him. Then she put the 6 photos on the table. Her attorney sat back and did not say another word about financial impact. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at my wife, and asked her attorney if they were contesting the adultery finding. Her attorney said no. Mississippi law did the rest. No alimony, not a dollar, not a negotiation. The adultery finding closed that door before her attorney could even push it open. The house stayed mine, premarital asset, my name on the deed, nothing to divide. My business stayed mine, established before the marriage, documentation going back 11 years. The joint account was split, but the judge noted the transfers and ruled that the amount she moved during her trips would be factored into the final division. She walked out of that courtroom with her car, her personal belongings, and nothing else. No house, no spousal support, no share of the business. 9 years of marriage, and she left with what she came with. I signed the final paperwork at my attorney's office on a Wednesday afternoon and drove straight to the job site. My guys were pouring a foundation on a new build 2 miles out, and I wanted to be there when it set. She moved in with her sister 3 days after the hearing. Her consulting business had been struggling before the divorce, and without the financial cushion our joint account provided, it fell apart fast. Last I heard, she was working a front desk job at $14 an hour. The morning after the hearing, I woke up in my own house with a business that was mine, and not a single dollar going out the door to someone who spent the last year or so spending my money on another man. Mississippi law does not care about your feelings. It cares about what you can prove. If you are sitting on a suspicion right now, document everything, say nothing, and call an attorney before you confront anybody. She was careful, but careful people eventually slip. A postcard in the mail was all it took. Update 1. About 3 months after the divorce was final, I got a call from her sister. Not my wife, her sister, the one she had moved in with after the hearing. She was not calling to take sides or get in the middle of anything. She made that clear right away. She called because she was worried and did not know who else to talk to. She said my wife had stopped getting up in the morning. Not figuratively, literally. She was staying in bed until noon, sometimes later, not eating right, not returning calls from the few clients she had left, not doing anything that looked like someone trying to rebuild. She said she had tried to talk to her about getting back into consulting, picking up some contract work, anything to get some income coming in. My wife told her there was no point. Her sister asked me if I would consider talking to her. I told her I was sorry her sister was struggling and that I genuinely meant that, but that I was not the right person to help her through it. She understood. She thanked me for picking up the phone, and that was the end of the call. I sat with that conversation for a while after I hung up, not because I felt guilty. I had nothing to feel guilty about, but because 9 years is a long time, and you do not just turn that off like a switch. I had loved that woman. I had built a life with her, lived in the same house with her, eaten dinner with her every night for 9 years. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, she had decided to build something else on the side without telling me. The grief was real, even when the anger was louder. My therapist, a guy I started seeing about a month after the divorce was final, told me that grief and anger are not opposites. He said most people going through something like this expect to feel one or the other and get confused when they feel both at the same time. He said the goal was not to stop feeling either one. It was to stop letting either one make decisions for you. That stuck with me. I had made every decision in this process from a clear head. The documentation, the attorney, the hearing, all of it. I had not reacted. I had planned, and the outcome reflected that. But sitting in my truck after hanging up with her sister, I let myself feel the weight of it for a few minutes without trying to manage it. The whole thing from start to finish felt like something that happened to someone else, except it had happened to me, in my house, with my money, while I was at work. I started the truck and drove to the job site. My guys were finishing up a pour on a commercial build we had been working on for 6 weeks, and I wanted to see it through to the end of the day. There is something about concrete that I have always respected. You pour it, you work it, you smooth it out, and then it sets. Once it sets, it does not move. Whatever shape you gave it, whatever surface you finished it to, that is what it is. The rest of my life felt like that. The divorce was set. The outcome was documented. The shape of what came next was mine to decide. I got out of the truck, put on my boots, and went to work. Update 2. About 5 months after the divorce was final, My company landed the biggest contract we had seen since I started the business, a commercial build on the east side of Hattiesburg. 12 months of work, enough to bring on 2 more guys and upgrade equipment I had been putting off for 2 years. I called my foreman from the parking lot before I even started the truck. We broke ground 3 weeks later. Around that same time, my therapist said something that has stayed with me. He said the hardest part of something like this is not the anger. Anger has fuel, and eventually it runs out. The hardest part is figuring out who you are when the anger is gone, and you are just left standing there with your life in front of you. I had spent 8 months documenting, planning, staying quiet, staying focused. The divorce was done. The outcome was locked. The anger was starting to lose its grip. What was left was just me, my company, my house, and 14 guys who showed up every morning because I built something worth showing up for. 6 months after the hearing, I ran into her at a gas station. She saw me first. She looked like she wanted to say something, stood there for a second with her hand on her car door, then got in and left without saying a word. But I noticed her back seat was full of clothes. I just shook my head. I finished filling my tank, got in my truck, and drove to the job site. My guys were framing the 3rd floor of that commercial build, and I wanted to be there when they topped out. I parked, laced up my boots, and walked the site for 2 hours. Concrete below me, steel going up around me, 14 guys doing exactly what they were supposed to do. That is what I had built. That is what was still standing. After that job was finished, I called my ex-sister-in-law and asked about my ex-wife because I was curious as to why her backseat was full of clothes. Well, her sister kicked her out and believes she is homeless.